Alrighty. So since Cinco de Mayo is coming up, I figure I'd share my Mexican restaurant style shredded beef chimichanga and enchilada recipe. So the first thing I'm going to do is make the marinade for the carne asada. And carne asada is just a term meaning marinated and grilled beef. So traditionally, carne asada is made with flank steak. It's kind of a long, thinner cut of beef, and it's not very dense. It's pretty movable, and it's got little thin layers of fat in it that make it really tender and really good for grilling and shredding to put on like tacos and enchiladas. So I've got the marinade for that, and that is the first step. I have had a couple of authentic carne asada meat dishes before, and this is the recipe I made that I think is pretty comparable to an actual authentic Mexican carne asada, or as close as I could get. So I usually kind of eyeball my measurements in my recipes, but I wrote them out just to try to give a good idea of how much I use in the marinade. So I'm going to start off with about 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil, about 2 tablespoons of vinegar, about probably a tablespoon and a half of orange juice. This is actually juice that I actually squeezed from an orange. That gives you a little bit more of a traditional flavor, but if you've got, a bottle of orange juice in the fridge, that'll do just fine. About 2 tablespoons of lime juice, and I'm going to use about 1 to 2 teaspoons of jalapeno juice just because I don't like a whole lot of heat. But if you like a lot, you can use a few teaspoons or a couple tablespoons, or you can cut up a jalapeno and put it in the marinade, whatever works. I'm also going to use, let's see here, about 2 teaspoons of garlic powder. You could also chop up a couple cloves and put it in there. And about 1 teaspoon of coriander. You could also use about a 1/4 cup of chopped cilantro. Coriander is actually ground up cilantro seeds, so if you don't want to get cilantro or you don't have it, coriander works just fine. I'm also going to use about a teaspoon of onion powder. I'm going to use between a half and a full teaspoon of chili powder, and about a half a teaspoon of cumin, and about a half to a teaspoon of salt, and a half teaspoon of pepper. And like I said, it's you usually marinate a flank steak with this marinade, but it's the quarantine. I'm not getting out to get flank steak, so what I've got is just some cubed up beef cubes that's used for like beef stew, and I've just kind of pounded them out and tenderized them a little bit, and I'm going to make do with that. And I'm not pulling the grill out because it's still chilly, so I'm going to do this on my stovetop. So I'm going to put everything in the marinade. Alrighty, so my beef marinated in the fridge for about an hour and a half, and it smells fucking amazing. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to take it out, put it on a pan that's on about medium heat, and with the thickness of these are on average about a half an inch thick, between a half and 3/4 inch thick. So I think I'm going to cook them on medium for about 5 or so minutes on each side, and then I'm going to take them out probably when they're close to being cooked all the way through, and then I'm going to shred them, and then I'm going to show you guys the next step. So first, start to get these on here. This marinade smells amazing. It's just, it's tits. There's no other way to describe it. It's tits. This is carne asada at its finest. Alright, I'm going to finish putting those in, and I'll show you the next step when I'm finished. Alright, so I finished cooking my beef. It cooked for about 6 minutes on each side, being about 3/4 inch thick, and I shredded it. And that is what it looks like. It tastes wonderful. I like to use a lot of lime juice in mine because I like lime flavor. I used a couple tablespoons. If you don't like a whole lot of lime, just use 1 tablespoon or just a couple of teaspoons and it won't be that sharp. But I liked it, so that's what I did. So now what I'm going to do is I have my pan coming up to heat again. I just drained the fat out of it and put it back on the stove. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my meat and I'm going to put it back in the pan. And I'm doing this because I'm going to add a little bit of stuff to sauce it up before I load it into the tortilla shells, because when you bite into an enchilada or a chimichanga, it's not dry meat, it's saucy meat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of beef broth and a little bit of tomato sauce to it. This is kind of like the base of a chili. So I'm going to add a little bit of this into it, and I'm probably going to add a little bit of my marinade into it as well, just for shits and giggles. And then kind of let it simmer, come up to probably a slow simmer, and then thicken up a little bit, and then I'll be ready to load it. So I'm going to put probably about 4 tablespoons of beef broth in here. I don't want it to be too thick, but just to give it a little extra sauce. And probably about a tablespoon of tomato sauce. And then I'm gonna add a little bit of my marinade, about a teaspoon, just to give it a little extra flavor in there. But again, the meat is super well flavored, so it'll carry it on its own. And I'm just gonna watch this. This is gonna come up to a low simmer, and I'm gonna wait until the sauce just thickens up a little bit. It'll probably take about anywhere between probably 5 to 7 minutes. Alrighty. So I'm gonna wait for that come up to come up to a simmer. Give it probably about 5 or 6 minutes, and then I will show you guys how I load up and fry the chimichanga, and how I load up and heat up the enchilada. Okay, so what I did was I took my yellow corn tortillas and I put my meat mixture in there. It only took about 5 minutes to get the sauce all cooked in. So I put them in there and I rolled them up. Before I rolled them up, I took the yellow tortillas and put them in the microwave for about 10 minutes just to kind of soften them up so they don't break when you roll them up. I am going to put these in the oven just for a few minutes just to kind of warm everything up before I dress them. So I'm going to set these aside for now. And then I am going to roll up my chimichanga with a flour tortilla. So how I'm going to do that is I'm going to put all the meat in the middle. Make it a nice hearty one. And then I'm just going to fold it to the center. Fold both sides over, and then finish folding it like that. And I think my oil's up to temperature. Like I said, chimichangas are fried. So I've got about between 1/8 and 1/4 inch of vegetable oil in this pot. And I'm just going to stick it in here, and I'm going to fry it for about, I'd say about 45 seconds on each side. You just want it to get it a little crisp. And then I'm going to take it out, put it on a paper towel lined plate. While I do that, I'm going to put my enchiladas in the oven to warm those up, and then I will show you what it looks like when it's done. So it's lightly boiling, or not boiling, lightly frying. And like I said, I'll do that for about 45 seconds on each side. Put it on a paper towel lined plate to let it drain, and then I'll dress them, and we're gonna give them a try. And I'm sorry, but you just have to see that. That's just fucking beautiful. That's a chimichanga. Love chimichangas. Alrighty. Alrighty. So these are my enchiladas. See if you can see them. I just put some red sauce on them and a little bit of Mexican crema. And then this is my chimichanga, which is one of my favorite Mexican dishes. Again, it's the flour tortilla shell fried up, and I have some Mexican crema on it because the way I like mine, I just like Mexican crema or sometimes white queso. But they came out really well. The meat tastes really good, so I'm going to give this one a try. And yeah. This is one of my favorite dishes to order whenever I go to a Mexican restaurant, so I got to give it a little try. Just a little bit. Boom. God, I haven't made this in a while. That is legit. I'm not trying to toot my own horn. That's legit. Everything that I did, from the carne asada marinade to the putting a little bit of beef stock and tomato sauce and just a little bit of the marinade into that sauce to make it all saucy before I loaded it into the tortillas. It just adds, it's a wonderful flavor. It's, hate to say the M word, but it's nice and moist, it's tender, it's beautiful. Even though I didn't have flank steak, I made do with what I had, and I was able to cook it up nice the way I wanted to on about medium heat. Didn't want to sear it too much and make it too tough, but cooked it on an average heat, and it's delicious. And I like the crema on it. The crema, I think, really complements the savoriness of the beef. But if you like shredded beef, enchiladas or chimichangas at all, I would definitely give this recipe a try. Like I said, the carne asada marinade, it's close to authentic Mexican carne asada, and then just adding that beef broth and that tomato sauce and a little bit of the marinade to the sauce part just completely makes it. So I'm really happy with how this recipe turns out each time. And honestly, I hate to say it, but sometimes I prefer just cooking this at home instead of going out to a Mexican restaurant, because that's good shit. Anyway, I'm done. I'm sorry. But if you like Mexican food and you can't get out and you can't go get it and you want to try to give this a try at home, it is easy. It's just a few steps, but it's simple to do. The marinade to put together is simple. It just takes a few ingredients and a few steps, but it's easy and it comes out really good. So it's delicious. I'm gonna have to give this to my mom. So if you're wanting to do Mexican night and you give it a try, hope you enjoy it.